Perfect.
Really strange. The intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant. We've created a society that honours the servant and has forgotten the gift. A quote by Albert Einstein. Hello and welcome to this podcast and a brand new year. If you're anything like me, this time of year brings a mix of hope, reflection, and let's be honest, a little pressure. Pressure to set goals, make plans, and somehow figure out how to do more. But what if we started this year differently? What if instead of asking, what should I do next, we asked, what feels true to me? What is it that I want? Today's conversation is a moment to pause, to breathe, and to reconnect with something many of us have been taught to override, our intuition. And I'm thrilled to be joined by Chandu Bickford. Hello, Chandu.
Hello, Kerryn. Good morning.
Chandu is a coach, mentor, educator, and speaker who spent the past 20 years helping people rediscover their inner knowledge and rediscover their inner knowing and navigate change with clarity and confidence. If you've been feeling that quiet ache, that sense that something's missing, that something could be better, this episode is for you. We're going to be talking about what it means to come home to yourself and why this is the perfect moment to reconnect with your intuition and the simple, powerful steps you can take to make meaningful change this year from the inside out. So find a quiet spot, take some time to just be, and let's begin. Chandu is someone who brings both depth and practicality to the inner journey. With a background in nursing, cultural education, business leadership, and over 20 years of mentoring, Chandu supports individuals and teams through times of change by helping them reconnect with clarity, courage, and calm. Her work is grounded in the belief that the answers we're searching for aren't always out there, but often already within us. We just need to remember how to listen to them. And today she'll guide us through that remembering. And Chandu, I'm so glad to have you here. It's so perfect at this time of the year when we face into the new year. How do you set yourself up for the new year? And what pressure... So let's start right where so many people find themselves this year. How do you set yourself up? I think there's a sense of pressure to start strong, to have new goals, new habits, new everything. And we often have such a plate of shoulds. What do you choose to observe and feel at this time of the year, Chandu? And how can intuition guide a more meaningful start instead?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, Kerryn. And at the beginning of the year, we're in the height of summer, we're full of energy, the seasonal energy is supporting us, and we're starting back into what we see as a whole new cycle. And I think that for me, taking time to observe and feel, and those the words that you've used there, help me learn to tune into my intuition. So observing what's going on around me, in summer, we've got everything happening. The gardens are abundant, our energy is abundant, and that the feelings are of energy and capacity and excitement and inspiration. So often at the beginning of the year, we kick off with, this is the year I'm going to kick those goals or make that change or start that new habit or ditch that old habit, kick that goal out of the park, because we've got all this energy and inspiration moving through us. So we start with good intentions, but I'm pretty sure most of us at some stage in our life have made like a New Year's resolution, and then within 3 days we've found that, the diet's been ditched, the health kick has been forgotten. That new habit that we swore we'd kind of pick up has been completely pushed to the side. And one of the reasons that happens is because we've made a decision with our head to do something. We might have felt an inner inspiration that might be good for us, but we've made a decision with our head, we're going to do this. Yeah. And what
Mm,
happens is our head is also managing all of the other demands and distractions that are going on in our daily life. So our head goes, right, I'm going to start going to the gym, or I'm going to take up yoga, or I'm going to, ditch sugar, or I'm going to be, part of this community project or whatever. And then the daily life and its demands and distractions kick in. And then we end up with this sense of overwhelm. Yeah, it's like, oh, it's too
yeah, for
hard.
sure.
It's too much. What was I thinking? So for me, the beginning of the year is the perfect time to review and reassess what's actually been going on in my life up until now. Yeah. And to do that, I need to pause. And I'm not just talking about pausing by kind of lying by the pool with a, pina colada. And that can be one type of thing. Some people
Sounds good.
yeah, yeah. So some people really like that. But pausing is, you know, taking yourself out of those demands and distractions. And that doesn't mean you have to go off on a silent retreat for 20 days. I've done plenty of that. But, we don't often have those opportunities in life. So to give yourself permission to have small pauses where you check in with yourself and go, well, how do I really want to be feeling this year? And
Mm,
how would I like to be feeling this time next year? Because most of us get to the end of the year feeling exhausted, burned out, pressured, going, oh, I can't wait to have a break. And then suddenly at the beginning of the year, it all just kind of kicks off again, right?
mm,
So giving ourselves a bit of time to pause and check in with how we're feeling right now, a little bit of reflection. How did last year go? Yeah. Where am I at now? And where do I want to be? Not according to our heads, according to our inner side. And that's why we need that pause and that quiet so we can hear that information. I love
yeah, I think that's so valuable because it is. If you're a mother, then you're thinking about the kids going back to school, and you're thinking about things you might want to do around the house. You're thinking about the bills that are coming in. It's very noisy, and there's just constant um, distractions in our head. So
absolutely.
taking that time to just stop, I think, is really important.
So one of the things that I kind of think a little bit about and can be helpful is if you're standing on the side of a pool, for example, or on the side of the river, the bank of the river, and you're thinking, I'm going to dive into the water. Yeah. You don't just kind of, you don't just arrive there and dive in. There's usually a pause. Yeah. Hopefully there's usually a pause. You know, you know,
Check out the surrounds, whether they're
Right,
safe.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So we pause on the edge of the pool, we check the surroundings, we see how we're positioned, we think about where we want to go and where we want to end up. Yeah. And we
Mm,
check in with ourselves. And before we jump, we take a deep breath. We prepare ourselves, right? And so
yes.
we're preparing ourselves to align with the vision. I'm going to hold my breath. I'm going to dive under the water. I'm going to come up over there, and then I'm going to swim, or I'm going to bob around, have a game, whatever. And I kind of like to think that's what it can be like using your intuition. Yeah.
Mm,
When you pause and you get clear on, you begin to understand what you really want, and you can discern how to apply your time and your energy and your focus so you can
mm.
move forward.
Yeah, I'm a very visual person, so I like that story very much about the river. But I also was thinking about I spend a lot of time during the summer on the beach,
Yes,
and knowing where you should swim between the flags or what's ahead of you if you make the wrong choice. You
absolutely.
do need to pause and be thinking of the consequences of your actions as well, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah,
Mm,
because I mean, all choices have consequences, right?
they sure do. What are some of the common signs when someone might be living out of alignment with their intuitive self?
Great question. And this is often people when they come to work with me, when they come to a program or they come to me individually, there's a number of things that they're feeling and noticing about themselves. Each person is unique, so we might not all have these symptoms or these signals, but there are some really key signals that we are sort of out of alignment. One is we spend a lot of time second guessing ourselves. Yeah, like really doubting ourselves. Is this right? Am I right? Should I do this? Should I do that? I'm not a big fan of should. So whenever a should comes up, I know that there's something going on for me. Um, Searching and seeking outside for the answers is another really good indicator. Now, I'm all about when it comes to health and finances and legals, getting the right support and getting the right advice. And I totally recommend that for people. But there's this sort of approval seeking and constantly searching out advice from others because we almost can't kind of trust ourselves to make a decision. And that feeling, if I make a decision and it's wrong, then, I'm wrong. So that's a really good indicator. Feeling resentful can be a really good indicator of being out of alignment because often we're kind of doing something that we feel perhaps that we don't want to be doing, or we're spending time in ways that we would rather put our energy somewhere else. Feelings of hopelessness, like that,
Mm.
oh gosh, everything I try falls over, nothing's working for me, and feeling sort of habitually uninspired, yeah, brittle can
Mhm.
be a good way to describe that. Another thing I have noticed is like a sense of spinning your wheels in sand, like that, like when your brain's just going and going and going and you can't get the answers to things. You're not getting traction or any inner satisfaction.
Mm.
That's a couple of indicators. Yeah.
Yeah, I can relate to some of those. And if you happen to have them all happening at once, it's a very uncomfortable space to be in.
It really is. And you see, they're really quite normal, right? Like
Mm.
most of us
Mm.
lack of, like a sense of doubt, or we ask for a lot of opinions, or, we don't feel that we can trust our judgment. At times, most of us feel these things.
Sure. I think we feel like we're being pulled in so many different directions. Sometimes it's hard to center yourself back and uh, make that alignment. Can
Mhm.
you share a story or two where trusting intuition has led to a powerful transformation? Maybe your own story. How did you get into this area and recognize your strength in helping people?
Yeah.
Mm.
How did I get into it? Well, I guess it got into me.
Uh,
It's probably the best way to put it. I think initially, I think as a child, I grew up one of four children under 3 and 3 months in a very small, crowded, noisy house. So I learned to appreciate space and bush and quiet quite early on in life. And I was a natural lover of the bush. I always was drawn to sort of a writing and poetry, and I used to write a lot of poetry even as a child. So I think when you spend and when so for me, I spent a lot of time in nature, and I spent a lot of time kind of writing and writing poetry. And for me, that there's an observing around there that happens. Growing up a kid in the 70s, we didn't have the myriad distractions. It was like, get out of the house, you're on your bikes or your skates or in the bush with the dogs. It was very, the distractions weren't so, I mean, we were more of the distraction to my mum than all the distractions that we have today. You can imagine four kids all kind of just crammed in together. We were pretty distracting. So I think as I went forward in life, um, you know, I, I worked hard, and, I went into nursing, and I built a house and did all the kind of the relationship and studied art. And, so I ticked off all these boxes for the great Australian dream and, what we would consider measures of success. And I did that very early in my life, not because it was handed to me. I worked
Very
was,
hard.
but I worked very hard, but I soon realized that it wasn't all it was cracked up to be. And whilst on the outside I had all this shiny, lovely, comfortable life, that on the inside, I was actually really unsettled and deeply dissatisfied. And that wasn't with my partner or my job, or it was something that was bigger and deeper than that. And I couldn't name it. And I went into a period of depression in my early 20s, following a cancer diagnosis for my mum and a number of other things that happened in my family life and community. And I've just really started to question what I was doing and why, because I'd done everything that, we were supposed to do,
Mm.
and I'd achieved everything I was supposed to achieve. And the trajectory ahead was, oh, well, you'll just have more of the same. We'll get an investment property, and maybe you'll move from nursing more into art, and, like all of those sorts of things, or you'll climb the career ladder in this way. But I felt deeply, deeply misaligned with the life
Mm.
that I had created. And that I started writing more seriously. My art became a place of refuge. The bush became a great place of refuge. And I think over a period of time, I needed to withdraw from the demands of life. We were just talking about the demands and the distractions. I needed to withdraw from that. So over a period of time, I walked out of my relationship. I quit my job. I moved out of my home, that my brand new home that I just built, and I created all this space. And I didn't know why, but I just knew it wasn't right.
Mm.
And I think this is one of the things with intuition. We have this sense that I'm not quite sure that there's not a logical reason. I spent years creating this life and having all these logically very good things. So there wasn't the logical reason, but there was a deep inner knowing that this wasn't true for me. And it was during that period of time that I started understanding that there was this, and I guess started tapping back into that childhood feeling of knowing and peace and listening and noticing. And so, over a period of months, almost a year, very, very difficult months, on my hands and knees with, despair and heartbreak and lots of self-doubt and uncertainty, I dissolved my former life. And in that spaciousness, one day a very clear, intuitive voice arose and said to me, "Well, what are you doing? Like, you've dissolved everything, and what's your plan?" And I was like, "I don't know, I'm okay." Like, and it was like, "Well, why don't you go to Africa?" And that was like, well, why don't you go to Mars for me? It was one of the, like, it was the mic drop moment of me actually understanding that there was a whole other life and way of living that I could experience if I chose to listen deeply and step into a life that was aligning with my heart and my gut, not just my.
Yeah. It's amazing that you were able to, with time, work through that, and also had the courage to take the changes, to make the changes happen. Because I think it's easy to stay in a bubble or to stay doing something that doesn't suit you anymore, and to be able to work out over time what it is that lights you up and gives your life direction, is such a powerful, important part of existence, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a very difficult time, and lots of just question marks. Like, what am I doing? Why have I left this perfectly good marriage? Why have I left this perfectly good home? Why am I leaving
Mm.
this job? But just knowing that they weren't right anymore for me. And
Mm.
this isn't a, this is a don't try this at home, kids. Like, this was, it's not like my path was not for everyone. I'll think about like a couple of women that I've been working with over the last little while. One's she's been in big corp with big responsibility, big organization, big expectation. She's a financial expert, really quiet, fastidious woman, and worker. Exactly the kind of person you want managing the finance in your projects in a really big organization.
Mm.
She came to me because with each meeting and each deadline, she was starting to feel more anxious. Yeah,
Mm.
the big personalities and their big demands were starting to drown out her voice and her needs. And, like like me in a very different circumstance all those years ago, she started to feel like a shell of who she was. Like there was this feeling of not being fulfilled. And so over time, in our sessions, we crafted space and time for her, but also techniques to help her tap back into her inner voice
Mm.
again, and where she started to listen and trust her own judgments and make choices that supported her and made her feel aligned in what she was doing.
I
And
really, yeah, sorry, go
no,
on.
I was just going to say that what happened was as a result of that, she was able to sort of step away from the massive, overly masculine pressures of this industry that she was in and move, following her intuition, move into a place where now she works using the same skills and talents, but in an aligned way for good money with an organization that she feels settled with, but which allows her the time and space to serve and connect with her inner needs.
Mm.
Yeah,
I, I think there's a time in life where that also becomes a driver. I know from the business community that I've run for 13 years that a lot of the men and women are fulfilled in their work, but they are still looking for purpose in life and what's, that next level of satisfaction and knowing that they have more to offer, but
that's
not
it.
necessarily knowing what that is at the time. And I think there's a time in life that we all question where we what are we really doing? Are we getting the most out of the time that we have and the skills that we can contribute that give us also that growth and fulfillment?
Yeah, I love that, Karen. And I think you've really hit the nail on the head around one of the key things that I find intuition helps us with is what am I doing? Like, because we're doing lots of things. No one's not doing anything. I don't know. You look everywhere. Everyone's got lists of doing, buckets of doing, wheelbarrows full of doing, right? Yeah.
Yes.
But is what I'm doing fulfilling me? Is what I'm
Mm,
doing serving the greater good? Is what I'm doing bringing a sense of joy or inspiration? I don't expect to be happy all the time. Like, I think that's an unrealistic expectation. But that sense of fulfillment comes with a sense of alignment. Yeah.
yes.
And
Yes.
when we can still be working hard. Like this woman I was just talking about, she still works really hard. She's still using her skills, but it's in a different way. There's a different methodology because she's aligned differently with
Mm,
herself and changed companies. And we can't change what's going on around us, but we can change certain things within us. And once we become aware of what those things are, we can choose them really powerfully. But often we're thinking, this is what I need to do, or that should be the path, rather than actually what wants to tell me
yes.
is the path.
Yes.
What does this want to show me?
That's one of the reasons I have the podcast, really, is to be able to have conversations like this for people to be able to perhaps tune in to what stands out for them that they might want to explore further, and to help us all sort of reflect on what our values are and the contributions we can make, and hear from a range of people who have chosen a different lifestyle to
Mm,
our what might be our style, and not to judge or whatever, but just to be open and expand our thinking, and therefore be able to have confidence in our own intuition that we're not the only one that perhaps feels this way if we're feeling that there should be a shift.
mm. So that's part of your great service, isn't it, Karen? Like that you've actually followed your inner guidance
Yes.
to bring something to help other people feel inspired, feel more on track, feel less alone, feel more connected, yeah, to a great
Yeah.
community as well as themselves.
Sure. I hope that and it's my way of contributing to create an impact too, because I help people to amplify the amazing things that they're doing, and perhaps to create awareness, as I said, for other people to realize that you don't have to stay on the same path. You can choose something different. And often, you might see a level of a business owner, but if you invest the time in talking to them, there's more than just their business. There's that wisdom, and everybody has wisdom that we can learn from and share.
Absolutely. Yeah. And two of the key words that I love that you used there, one was amplify, and we all have that capacity and we all get to choose what we amplify. I mean, we can amplify something that's negative or, distressing. We can amplify something that's good and wholesome. And the other one was awareness. And awareness, particularly self-awareness, is absolutely crucial in developing a relationship with your intuition.
Mm. So, what are the top 5 steps someone can take to reconnect with their intuition? You've possibly skimmed over the top, I'd suggest, with pausing and considering and sitting in the space. But as we're starting the new chapter, giving them a short, sharp list of what they could do.
Yeah, sure. So I think in our busy society, and even if we're not feeling particularly busy, there is an impetus. And, to use the river analogy, the river is flowing quite fast a lot of the time. So for us, excuse me, to try to tap into our intuition, the first most important thing is to slow down. That's just number one, is slow down. Give yourself an opportunity to land in the moment. Often our brain is going in what happened or what I'd do if that didn't, or we're moving into the future. Oh gosh, this is about to happen. We're so pulled in these two different directions that actually landing in the moment and staying present, even for a couple of breaths, even just for 3 in and out breaths can make such a massive difference to a spinning mind, to a mind that's, caught up in something in self-doubt. Taking 3 breaths and slowing down is absolutely the first one. The second one is creating space. Yeah, so carving out regular moments where you step off that treadmill, yeah, and you tune into your own needs. And
Mm.
because the needs of everyone else is there. Every time we're looking out, everyone else has needs, and it's great. We want to be able to meet them, right? We've all got families, colleagues, clients, staff, community. So where we can get off that treadmill and start to tune into our own needs, again, only briefly. Things like journaling, meditation. For me, what if I'm mentoring and coaching remotely, I work from my garden. Yeah, and then in between that, I will walk in my garden, I'll go down in the bush, to help me process what I've
Mm.
just heard and what's going on for me, but then also to recalibrate so that I'm able to meet my next client fully, or my children, or whatever,
Yes.
whatever,
Yeah.
whatever might be coming up next. So we've got slow down, we've got create space, simplify is the next.
Mm.
Okay, reduce the distractions and demands. Okay, and make space during the week that are just one thing at a time. You know, like it's so easy. I mean, people have got the big screen on, they've got the something on the phone, they're looking at the pots are boiling over on the stove,
Yes.
someone's ringing because they need to be picked up from the railway station or dropped somewhere, or the dog was barking. Like there's all these things that we're managing at the same time. Remember when multitasking was like the holy grail? Like,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like
It's easier to have less things, that's for sure.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
for sure.
So simplifying it down and just having spaces in the week where you're only doing one thing. I'm just reading a book.
Mm.
Even if it's just 10 minutes, I'm just lying on the bed and I'm just breathing. Yeah. And this builds a new ability because your inner wisdom can't bubble up and be heard with all the other bits going on. It's just not built in a competitive manner like we are. We're really competitive, right? Our brain and our ego is super competitive.
Yes.
But the inner wisdom and our intuition is not competitive. It is just there all the time. Okay. Self-care is number 4. That is absolutely vital. Um, if you're run ragged and you're distracted, you just simply can't tap into and hear your inner wisdom. Yeah.
Mm.
You're just too
Mm.
exhausted. And we all know that space. We've all been there.
Yes.
Um, and it's, there's just way too much going on. So self-care and, self-care for some people might be manicures and massages. They're great. Self-care for me is getting to bed at an hour, which is really healthy for me. It's making sure my diet is good. It's making sure I've got clean air and I've got places in the week where I'm not scheduled. So everyone's idea of self-care is important. It's not big, it's not
Sure.
expensive.
Well, it's easier to put it into those smaller things, isn't it? Because to find a big space of time, like for me to have my nails, it's like
Yeah,
I don't want to sit there for an hour, waiting for it to dry. That's
yeah.
not relaxing for me. So, yeah.
Sure, absolutely. So self-care has become quite a commodity. We can kind of commercialize anything, right? But if we just sort of tap in and go, oh, I remember my mum kind of saying, I just can't hear myself think. Can everyone just be quiet? Like, her
Mm.
her care for herself was all of us going out in the bush and her
Yes.
just having a quiet house, so
Yes.
she could hear herself think. It's it's often really simple. And the last one, so number 5, is self-trust. Yeah.
Mm.
Instead of scanning the outer world for answers, yeah, stop and sit with your question or your inquiry. Yeah. Okay.
Mm.
You
Mm.
may not get an answer straight away. Yeah. But pay attention because there are often indicators of what you need to know and they're just waiting to show themselves. So
Mm.
we
Mm.
need to be able to trust them. We go, oh, it's like, I'm just waiting for a sign from the universe. And it's, like, and
Yes.
and then there might be 50 different things that happen, but no, we're waiting. It has to show up in this particular way. Yeah.
Yes.
We need to learn to trust that, oh, it actually feels a bit like that. Or I mean, if I hadn't trusted that it meant I had to go into a deep hole in my early 20s emotionally, and I had to let things go that I loved. Even though I couldn't see what was on the other side of that, I
Mm.
had to lean and trust that.
Yes, I shared in an earlier podcast about the fact that I had pneumonia and was in bed for 6 weeks when I was teaching, and I just knew that things had to change. My intuition just said, "This is not why I'm here on this earth.
Yeah.
I'm not here to, kill myself over my work. I'm here to live a full life and for my family." And so things needed to change, but it took that time, sick in bed, to
Yeah.
actually pause.
Yeah. And that's such a great story. And I'm really sorry for your illness and sorry for, the suffering that had to happen. But sometimes, when we don't create the space and the self-care and simplify things, life will do that for us.
It does
And
seem to do that.
um, I don't know, but maybe if we can help that along rather than waiting until we have the accident or the incident or the illness or the situation arise. That's not to say that they're not going to happen anyway, but there are ways that often we have indicators of things
Yes.
before they happen, but we've been too busy, we've been too distracted, we haven't paid enough attention, there isn't enough time, there's too many demands or distractions, and we don't give ourselves what we need, and then we become run down.
Yeah. Excellent. What a great way to start the year having this conversation with you. So, just before we finish up a bit, if you came to one of my events, then I might bring out my conversation starter cards. And the card that I might pull out for you is, what do you hope to do that you've never done before? And seeing we're going into a new year, what do you hope for that you've never done before?
Oh, I have such a big list of hopes. And actually, one of my practices, I'm just playing with something at the moment, which is fun. I'm writing down 300 things I would love. Yeah. And that's a lot. Like I've got to about 80. And
Yes,
like it's hard to kind of, oh God,
yes,
and because I lived in Africa for a long time and lived very simply, I guess I don't necessarily have big material wants. I mean, of course, comfort is one thing, but that sense of, do I need a Bentley? Do I need? I need an in-house hairdresser. I probably need her, but I don't think I actually want one. What do I hope for? I I hope.
Actually, I suppose it's actually more, what do you hope to do that you've never
Okay, what
done
do I
before?
hope to
Hope
do?
to do that you've never done before. I might edit that.
I've never
What do
done
you hope to do that you've never done before?
that I've never done. Oh gosh. Um, that's a good question. Well, I hope to publish my own books. I've had my work published in others' books over the years. I've certainly contributed to other books, but I hope to publish my own books, and so that's a definite hope. I think I have another hope, which is and it's something I've been working on for a while, but it's to bring more of a sense of integration and alignment to people, and particularly leaders, marrying the intellect and intuition. Yeah. And so even though I've run a lot of workshops and programs and done a lot of speaking over the years, my hope is to take that into more places and make it accessible, not just in business, but in everyday life.
So, what are the similarities and the differences between intellect and intuition?
Yeah, I guess, intellect is more of it's more of that rational brain that we were talking about before, that logical. The intellect offers structure and clarity and analysis. Really, really helpful, right? Our intellect, it prizes sort of logic, and it can often, in leadership and in professional places, um, that can often be quite noisy. Yeah. I've got the idea, I've got the solution, I've got the problem. Let's get that organized. Now, I don't get me wrong, I'm incredibly practical and pragmatic. Intuition can feel like a quiet whisper in a noisy room. Yeah. So there's a valuing of both of them, that intellect with the structure and the clarity and the analysis. Your intuition complements that with things like insight, things like timing, yeah, and things like deeper truth. And so whilst you might have a great idea on a logical point of view, your intuition might be going, I don't think that's the right thing. Yeah, like, or it is the right thing, but I don't think this week's the week for that. I think this might be something we roll out next year. Or you might have a structure that you're following in a workplace, or even in your home. We all have structures, systems and habits and things that we set up. We might have something there, but our insight might be, no, something was working before for the kids and it's not working that way now. Or, when I was leading teams before, we used to do it in this way, but your insight's going, it's just not aligning with this group of people.
Mm,
Maybe I need to approach it differently. And so we're using both, there's sort of like two wings of the bird. Yeah.
mm, mm. I love that. We could talk for hours, absolutely for hours. How's the best way for people to connect with you to continue the conversation, Chandu?
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks so much for having me here. It's been just such a delight, and I've loved your insights as well that you've shared, and what you're doing and the work that you're bringing. The best way probably to get in contact with me is via my website. So that's chandubickford.com, or my other website, which is bigbraveheart.life. And you can always find me on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Instagram as well for more tips and tools, often daily, to help you tap back into your intuition. And, occasionally there's a bit of a poem thrown in there as well.
Wonderful. I need to follow you on Instagram. I haven't done that yet. So
Oh,
there's something else I learned about you today. To finish off, have you got a quote for us?
yeah. I don't have someone else's quote. I've got a couple of tips from my own work and as a writer.
Perfect.
So it's just a little bit of a mini poem here, I guess. Um, and maybe it's an invocation or even a prayer. Um, Lean gently towards what truly matters. Listen to your inner wisdom. Learn to trust yourself and let life rise up to meet you and your big, brave heart.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think I may have needed to hear that today, and I think it's a wonderful conversation for us to reflect on as we move into the new year. And my word for last year was intentional. And now I have to think about what the new word is, but maybe it is to do with my intuition. But thank you very much for being with me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Kerryn. It's been an absolute delight.